Hey, good morning, everybody. My name's Ethan, one of the pastors here, and so grateful that you decided to join us at the Bridge. And hey, this isn't in my notes, but just kind of want to say a couple things up front. First of all is there's a lot of things that a church can fake. You can hire good musicians, and you can use nice paint and have facilities and stuff like that. But a thing that a church cannot fake is the heart. And so I just want to say the heart is good in this house, and I'm just grateful for you and just kind of want to honor you. And it's so encouraging. There's no formula for this, but it's just so encouraging to come into a place with people who have a heart that will want to run after God. And so let me just honor you and bless you for that. Let me say hey to everybody that's worshiping online, and just thank you for worshiping with us, and wherever you are and whatever you're going through, however you got here, we're so glad that you got here today. Let me also say happy summer, everybody. Doesn't it feel like summer? My goodness, it's June, and I know officially on the calendar it's not summer yet, but it's June, so it kind of feels like summer. And school is ending this week, so we'll pray for all the parents. And I'm excited about the summer. Annual Vision Night is tomorrow night, which is going to be great. It's one of my highlights of the entire year. We get together, and I'm going to be sharing some things that are, I believe, encouraging for where we are as a church. As you know, we pulled the trigger on 3 worship gatherings just a few weeks ago, and I'll be sharing some updates like this tomorrow night. But one of the things I would just encourage you with is that compared to this time last year, over the past few weeks, we're up 20% in attendance, which is just nuts as a church. And so the church is growing, and you're bringing people, and I'm talking to people every single Sunday I'm like, how did you get here? And who told you about this place? It's crazy. The people that are coming. And so I just encourage you as we step into the summer, and it's great to have some space and some seats, and I've shared with our staff as well that when we come together, 50% full is better than 100% full, because 100% always means chaos. And so it's kind of nice to be able to have a season where I know that we have some opportunity to grow. And so we're gonna do that as we step into the summer and into the fall, and God is positioning us to be able to grow and to be able to reach our city. So those were a few things I just wanted to share before we dive in for today. I'd like to start with a question that is somewhat simple, but I believe is provocative. How do you know that you see the world accurately? How do you know that you see the world accurately? And if you immediately say, well, of course I see it accurately, that's the demonstration that you don't see it accurately. It's been interesting over the past few weeks in therapy with my Christian counselor, as we have been talking and processing, just things personally and a lot of my journey, and always wants to talk about my childhood, and all that stuff. But it's actually been incredibly helpful. And the more and more that I talk and spend time with this counselor in particular, the more that I recognize that my vantage point and my perspective for the way that I see things, and the way that I see people, and the way that I see our church, and the way that I see my family, the way that I see myself, is deeply influenced by my own experiences. And the older that I get, it feels like in some ways I've kind of got greater confidence, but I've got greater confidence in fewer things. And the scriptures would say, Jeremiah the prophet, he would say that our heart, or the inner self of what's at the core of each of us, that our heart is actually deceitful. And he says it's deceitful above all things, which means it's like more deceitful than anything else. That there's something inside us that can trick us and that can deceive us into thinking that we see and perceive reality when we actually don't perceive it. And he would even say that same heart, that inner self, he would say it's desperately sick. So what's necessary for you and for me, in order to understand the world, in order to understand reality appropriately or accurately, we need a higher perspective. We need a different perspective. It reminds me, a couple years ago, back in 2021, I had the great privilege to be on a sabbatical. After 7 years of full-time ministry here, I got to be on sabbatical. And one of the things that we did was we took our family to Hawaii, and it was the first time for many of us to be able to go to Hawaii. And on the island of Oahu, I just wanted to like see a sunrise, and I wanted to have like a spectacular moment to see a sunrise. So I told my family we're going to get up like an hour before sunrise one day. And we're going to go, because you have to go across the island to kind of see it come up on the east. And we went to the north side of the island, and there's this hike that's really, really famous. It's at Lanakai Beach, I believe is how you say it. And there's a hike there called the Lanakai Hike. And at the top of it is a pillbox, which is a military term for kind of like a guard post that looks out above the ocean. I got a picture for you, and this is me and my family when they were about half the size that they are right now. And we were sitting literally on the edge of that pillbox, this concrete bunker looking thing, looking out, and you can just barely see kind of the sun trying to peek through the clouds. And when we were up there, we saw things very differently. We could see, man, oh, God, there's islands, and I didn't know that there was. Look at those islands; it's amazing. I didn't know that we're out there. And then you could look down, and then you could see the town, and you could see the different area, and you could see the beach, and you could see the bay, and you could see the way that the mountains kind of formed along the coast of the area. It's when you have a higher perspective. It's when you're able to go up that you have the ability to see things more clearly and more appropriately. This is the whole point of what we're going to dive into today with this wonderful little story from the book of Exodus. I've titled the message today, Climb the Mountain. Climb the mountain. If you would, I'd like for you to join me in Exodus 19, and I'm going to pick up on the story where God's people in the Exodus journey have been delivered from Egypt. They've crossed through the Red Sea. God's brought them to a desolate place, a wilderness, a desert, and in the desert, God's going to begin to do a formational process in these people that's going to prepare them and position them for literally generations in the future. And one of the most critical things that God's going to do is he's going to bring them to this mountain. And here we see this mountain experience that Moses had prior in his own wilderness journey. God brings his people back to the very same mountain, Horeb or Mount Sinai. And here God is going to begin to do some of the work of forming them into who he wants them to become. Join me in Exodus 19, and I'll pick it up in verse 2. The text says this: They set out from Rephidim and came into the wilderness of Sinai, and they encamped in the wilderness. Who likes camping, by the way, just out of curiosity? How many of you would like camping for 40 years? Yeah, probably not. Well, that's hey, obey God today, okay? Let's not delay, and you won't have to do that. They're camping out in the wilderness. This is best we can. I've read different kind of stats on this, and different commentators and historians, and some say there was like thousands, and some say there was millions. But there's a lot of people in the group of God's people, the Israelites. It says there Israel encamped before the mountain. Somebody say the mountain. It's the mountain. They're there. God has brought them to this point, and so they're camping there. They've made now their home around this mountain while Moses went up to God. Somebody say up. He had to go up. Moses is going up to God. He's going up the mountain. It says this: the Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, thus you shall say to the house of Jacob and tell the people of Israel. We're going to see this incredibly wonderful, beautiful, crazy, dynamic relationship between God and Moses and God and the people. And God's going to be speaking to them quite literally. This is an allegory. He's speaking to them out of the mountain. It says in verse 4, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I, God says, bore you on eagle's wings. That's what God said he did to the people. I brought you here. I delivered you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Verse 5, now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice, and keep my covenant. Key word for today. You shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And these are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. Jump down to verse 9. It goes on. And the Lord said to Moses, behold, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you and may also believe you forever. So God's beginning to let them know how he's getting ready to manifest himself in the mountain in front of them. It says, when Moses told the words of the people to the Lord said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today, meaning set them apart today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments and be ready for the third day. For on the third day, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people, and you shall set limits for the people all around, saying, take care not to go up into the mountain or touch the edge of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. Jump with me to verse 16. And on the morning of the third day, there were thunders, like a good Eastern Carolina thunderstorm. Thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. It felt like a hurricane. And then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God. They took their stand at the foot of the mountain. Now, Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. And the smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln, I think like a chimney, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. And the Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain. And the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. Somebody say, climb the mountain. Climb the mountain. Here we see that God's people are now at the mountain, Mount Sinai. This mountain holds immense significance, both theologically and symbolically, for the people of God and for the remainder of the entire scriptures. This mountain was a place of theophany. It's a place where God actually makes his presence manifest among the people. The mountain was also a place of divine revelation, where God is going to speak to the people and give them revelation directly from him, much of them who have not experienced this before. The mountain is also significant because it's a place of covenant. It's a place of covenant where God's going to enter into a unique kind of relationship with them. It's also significant because of the law, the Constitution. We're going to dive into this a little bit more next week, but God's essentially going to give his people a constitution, a law, a way in which they should think and live and operate. The mountain is also significant because of the mediation role of Moses and Moses' interaction with people in between the people and God. The mountain is also a place of divine presence and guidance where God's going to lead and he's going to direct. The mountain is also significant because it's a place of transformation. It's a place of transformation where God's people are literally transformed in the moment, and it's a place of holiness where God calls his people into something bigger and to something greater. And so the mountain here is this pivotal site. It's this pivotal location where divine human interaction, some say, reaches its peak in the scriptures. And it's the place of God's self-revelation, which signifies God's presence and his guidance and his holiness, required to approach him, making it a central symbol in the religious narrative of the book of Exodus. What we'll see is that God's people spend, there's kind of different things that people argue, but it's upwards of almost a year. That God's people are going to spend about a year at this mountain. They're going to spend the next year understanding God. They're going to spend the next year receiving the law. They're going to be receiving from God here at this mountain. And also that Moses is going to ascend into the mountain. At least 7 different ascents that we can see. A few here in this chapter, and then several throughout the rest of the book, where Moses is going to go up into the mountain. climb the mountain, experience God, hear from him, and then come back down to the people and give the revelation. So it's a place of divine meeting, and it's a place I want you to see today of divine offering. That God is offering them something. I see three things. I'd love for you, if you're taking notes, I'd love for you to write these down. Three things I'd like to show you of three things that God's going to be offering the people, and then I'll have some subpoints in between these main three. Three things that God offers at the mountain. Here's number one. God offers a new relationship. He offers a new relationship. He is coming to them and he's interested in a new kind of relationship with them. We see here this word covenant. It's common throughout the scriptures. You'll hear about the Abrahamic covenant and the Mosaic covenant and the Davidic covenant. And a covenant is it's a kind of relationship that God is inviting them into, and he's also clarifying for them the kind of relationship that he wants with them. And so God is he's offering a new relationship. And this is a relationship that's going to be based on mutuality, meaning there's going to be a relationship between the people and God that's going to be mutual. There's going to be some things that God does. There's going to be some things that the people do. And there's conditions of the relationship. There are expectations of the relationship, as there is with all relationships that you enter into if they have any significance at all. Your friendships, your family, your marriage, your work, your whatever, every one of those relationships comes with expectations and conditions for the quality of relationship that is required, or that is at least expected. It's not like my relationship with the gas station down the road from my house. I go there when it's convenient and when they have good prices. But when it's not convenient and they don't have good prices, I go elsewhere. It's not a good relationship with the gas station. They probably don't like me, except for when I show up and give them money. That's not the kind of relationship that God wants with you. God wants a relationship that's mutual. He wants a relationship that is impactful. As I was preparing, it just dawned on me how impacted God is by the things that we do. That God is actually impacted by his people. Which means there's a level of concern, there's a level of mutuality there that God expects, or that at least he desires for you and me. And here we see that God wants relationship with his people, a new kind of relationship with them. And we have to recognize that it's God that is the one that's initiating the relationship. Did they go to God? No. Who comes to them? God comes to them. And we need to see here from the beginning that this is a God who comes down. He's a God who comes down. He's not a God that's like a million miles away and then hoping someday, some way, you'll kind of figure out how to find your way to him. No. God comes after you. God pursues you. He comes down. He comes and he inhabits. He comes and he indwells the space. I love the way that the late Eugene Peterson says that God would move into the neighborhood. He would come. He would come for us. And so we have a God that we see, and this is a meta theme throughout the Bible, that he's a God that comes down. He's a God that comes down to us. He's coming after us. He's chasing after us. So I'd like to say it this way. God pursues us before we pursue him. That's the story of the scriptures. That's the whole story. I love the way that Tim Keller, the late pastor, talks about the difference between gospel and religion. God essentially is saying, I've already saved you. I've saved you. I've carried you on eagle's wings to myself. I've delivered you. I've rescued you. I've brought you here. Now obey. Now he's getting ready to give them the law. And here's what God is essentially saying. I've completely accepted you, therefore obey. It's profound because every other religion on the face of the earth and every other human heart on the face of the earth, including ours, operates on the opposite principle. Every other religion thinks, I do right, I live right, therefore I'm accepted and I'm blessed. Every human heart operates on that basis, that if I live right and if I do right, then I'll be accepted and blessed. But right here in black and white, God says, no, I have carried you. I have saved you. I have accepted you. Now, therefore, obey. Not obey and you will be accepted, but I have accepted you. Now, therefore, obey. And God does not give them the law and then deliver them. He delivers them and then gives them the law. And so I'll say it this way. Obedience to God flows from relationship, not for relationship. It flows from relationship, not for relationship. Aren't you grateful that you have a God that isn't waiting until you get it right before he loves you and accepts you? But he's loving you and accepting you right where you are, in your mess, in your filth, in your brokenness, in your getting it wrong. And he's loving you in that space so that you can have the affection and the acceptance needed to be able to obey him at all. And so he gives love, and then he expects obedience on the other side. So the first thing we see is that God offers a new relationship. Here's number 2. God offers new identity. He offers new identity to these people. Can you see them with me? These people are a mess. Tell your neighbor you're a mess. You're a mess. They're a mess. You're a mess. We're a mess. Everybody's a mess. Sounds like a song. They've been living in Egypt. They're like, remember by trivia. How long have they been in Egypt? 400 years. 400 years. I was hoping that more of you would get that right, but I understand that can be intimidating. When you were thinking about it, you just didn't have the courage to say it. 400 years. 400 years in Egypt. They don't know what to think. They don't know how to act. They don't know who they are. They've literally been in bondage. They've been enslaved. They've had someone else tell them who they are for 400 years. And God says, I need you to meet me at the mountain. I need you to meet me at the mountain because I want to offer you a new identity. And he speaks to them. I just need you to see it. I need you to feel it. He says, if we're going to do this, if you want to follow me, here's what I'm offering you. You're going to be my treasured possession. Can you imagine? How many of you, your entire life, you've never felt like a treasured possession? How many of you, God was the first one that legitimately offered to you even the concept that you were something of value and significance? And God doesn't let their past define them. He doesn't let their wandering define them. He doesn't let their mess ups define them. God is speaking into just a mess of a group of people. And he says, I want you to understand, you're going to be my treasured possession. You're going to be something different than you've ever been before. And you're even going to be a holy nation. You're going to be a kind of nation that's going to be totally different. You're not going to be like anybody else. And I'm going to form you, and I'm going to make you into what you need to be. One commentator says this represents the separation of his chosen people from the general world population and the beginning of the outworking of his intention to bring close to himself a people that will join him for all eternity as adopted members of his family. God is now saying, you're mine. You're mine. And you have a new identity. You're now going to look like me, and you're going to live the way that I tell you to live. So I'll say it this way. As followers of Christ, we don't form our identity, we receive our identity. We don't wake up in the morning hoping to be something, hoping to define ourselves, hoping to give ourselves a new identity. We wake up every morning receiving the identity that God has already spoken over us. And the journey of the Christian life is actually you slowly understanding and becoming all the things God has already said to be true of you. And God's already spoken them. He's already declared them. And it's the journey of you and me actually finding that out and then understanding that and becoming the things that he has already spoken, but stepping into the identity that we have already received. And what God offers is available to all who will follow him. There's not some kind of category of like this kind of person that like can have an identity with God or have a new relationship with him. No, God's offer is to all who will follow him. And so we see that God offers a new relationship, and then he offers a new identity for a different kind of people that they're going to be. And then here's the third thing that we see is that God offers a new lifestyle. He offers a new lifestyle. He says you're going to be a kingdom of priests. Two weird words, okay? Let's just acknowledge it. Kingdom is just a word for God's rule and his reign and the way that his kingdom will operate. We have a country, we're the United States, but most of the world, they're kingdoms. They're groups of people, they're entities, they're nation states. That God's forming a new people, a new nation, a new group of people, and they're going to be priests. He doesn't say they're going to be warriors or they're going to be like soldiers or they're going to be leaders. He says they're going to be priests. You're all going to be priests. And here's what's interesting. A priest in the Bible, they were mediators between God and the people. They had the responsibility of offering sacrifices. They had responsibility of conducting rituals and ceremonies. They also were responsible to teach and interpret the law. They maintained the sanctuary, the house of God, and the tabernacle, and the temple, and the worship, the sanctuary. They also were responsible for blessing the people. And then they also served as judges, where they helped determine and to judge on what was right in matters and situations. Priests stand between God and humans and help bring humans closer to God and help dispense God's truth, justice, favor, and discipline and holiness to humans. And then God says, you're all going to be my priests. You're going to be an entire kingdom of priests. I love how Douglas Stewart, the commentator, he says this. They were not to be a people unto themselves who existed for themselves, enjoying their special relationship with God and paying no attention to the rest of the world. Rather, they were to represent him to the rest of the world and attempt to bring the rest of the world to him. I love that. They weren't just going to be a holy nation. They just weren't going to be a different people, but they were going to be a people with a purpose. And this purpose was going to be made known through their lifestyle, through the way that they were living, through the way that they were following him. So becoming a part of God's people, becoming his possession, becoming his nation, his kingdom also includes a kind of living and a kind of lifestyle that's going to be married to that. Meaning there's conditions and there are expectations of the way in which you're going to practice yourself in this kind of relationship. You could say that there was a relationship between the lifestyle and the law that they were going to receive. I love the way that Luke says it in Acts 7:38, speaking of God giving his law, releasing this lifestyle, this new lifestyle to his people. He says this is the one who was in the congregation of the wilderness with the angel who spoke to him at Mount Sinai and with our fathers. He received living oracles to give to us. So here's the way that the rest of those who are in the scripture interpret this moment and this situation that we're seeing God's people at the mountain. What they see is that God is actually giving them living oracles. He's giving them living revelation, divine revelation, in which they're going to understand and learn and receive how they should live and how they should operate. And so they're coming to the mountain. God's meeting them at the mountain, and God is declaring to them from the mountain how they should think, how they should operate, how they should live their lives. This is critically important. I'm trying to be really basic because it's important. So I'll say it this way. Truth comes from above, not below. Truth, you could say, comes down. It doesn't go up. I just need to park here. Is this what are we, what century is this? Like 21st century? We have 21st century America, post-Christian, cult, whatever. Just can we be really, really basic here that we don't tell God our truth. He tells us his truth. Okay. And I'm not at all trying to be sock it to him, Pastor Ethan. Let's give the progressives a conservative slap on the face. That's not at all what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to say more than ever, we need to recognize that we don't produce our own truth. We receive truth from God. And that's so critically important. God didn't call them into the desert. God didn't have a meeting with the people. And he's like, what do you guys think we should do? How do you think the world should operate? Tell me about relationships and money and finances and sexuality and all of that. No. God says, let me tell you. let me reveal to you. And God doesn't do this because he's angry or because he's mad. He does this because he's so good and he's so loving. He's like, you've been wandering. You've been in a foreign country. You don't know up from down, right from left. You don't know anything. So here, let me show you what is right, which is what righteousness is. And when you align yourself with righteousness, then you're going to actually see flourishing in your life. And the reason why we don't see flourishing in our society right now is because we're actually not aligned with what's right, with righteousness. And it's important that we see that this mountain experience is God coming down and it's truth coming down to us. And we need to really ask the question today that, do we even really want a relationship with God? And here's what I mean by that. Do you really want a relationship with God? If so, if you genuinely want a relationship with God, then you have to have a God who can say no. If God can't say no to you, it shows you don't actually want a relationship with him. You want to be God. And if you want to really know God, it means you have to really want to know truth, and it means you really have to submit and align your life into what God actually says, and you can't expect that truth is going to go up. Truth comes down from God. And God doesn't tell Moses to come up with it. He doesn't tell everybody to take a vote. He says, I'm going to reveal to you what is truth. And so here's the last point that I have is this: right living comes from right knowing. That's why we love the Word. I mean, this is why we love the Scriptures. I mean, it's a gift. We read the Scriptures, but really the Scriptures read us. It reveals to us. It shows us like what's true, what's right. I mean, even me. I like let's just kind of call myself. I'm kind of a professional Christian. I mean, I kind of get paid to do this. I mean, it's hard for me to say no to Ethan and align myself with everything in here. Imagine the world. But if we want to live right, you got to know what's right. And then you have to align yourself when you don't feel like it, when you don't want to do it. You got to align yourself with what God says about your money, what God says about your relationship, what God says about your home, what God says about your job, what God says about forgiving that person that you hate. You have to do it God's way. And if you want to have God's blessing in your life, you've got to do it God's way. Proverbs 29:18. When people do not accept divine guidance, they run wild. But whoever obeys the law is joyful. You understand that the law was actually given for your benefit. The instruction is given for your good, for your blessing. And the degree that you align yourself with it, you'll see the flourishing, the blessing that God has for your life. Growing up, I played a lot of sports as a kid. Any other athletes or jocks in the room played a lot of sports growing up? And there were four of us. I was the oldest of four, and I felt like I was playing sports 24/7. I would jump from one team to the next, and I loved to play. I love being an athlete. I love being able to win. I love a competition. I love an opponent. I love all of that stuff. But one of my fondest memories as a child, and I don't have to think very intensely to do this, but one of my fondest or I should say not fond, but one of my clearest memories as a child is coming off of the ball field. By God's grace, I had wonderful parents, and they were in my life, and they were actually, by God's grace, they were at most of my games and all this stuff. I remember coming off the ball field so many times, and my dad would give me the list of all the things that I didn't do right and how I could be better. Now, my dad, I think my dad was being very intentional, and it felt like criticism at the time. He'd tell me how I could do better. But the problem was, I think, that there were two different things that we were trying to achieve. Something I was trying to achieve and something my dad was trying to achieve. He was trying to achieve growth and improvement for me, while I was trying to achieve sonship. And because I wasn't already clear on my sonship identity, I played in such a way to try to achieve that for the rest of my life. You see, spiritually speaking, God invites you into relationship. He invites you as son and daughter, and he brings you in. And then he sends you out in his ways and in his law and living the right way. But it's not the inversion. And we need to recognize today that what God has for you and what he intends for you and the direction for you and the commands and the instructions on all the things, it's not so that you can gain your sonship with him. It's so that you can live it out. And the way that we know that we have sonship with God is through Jesus Christ, who's come for us in our place and for our sins. And in faith in him, we are declared righteous, not because of what we've done, but because of what he has done. Climb the mountain. Climb the mountain. Let's pray. God, today we stop and we just thank you in this moment for the reality that you are a God who comes down, that you're a God that comes down to us, and you meet us where we are, not where we should be. And so, Father, I just thank you for the opportunity to know you and to experience you today. And I pray that you would allow us to know you in a real meaningful, personal way, and to follow you as well.